Hopefully doesn't shit out on us today.
Hopefully not.
I would hate for that to happen. You know what they say. You might want to raise your microphone and make it point right at your mouth, because that's the best way to get heard. Welcome everybody to Flatlands, the podcast.
The podcast.
The podcast. Here with Jory, not with Steven, because, you know, Steven decided, I don't want to show up today.
He's playing chicken today.
I would say hooky.
Hooky?
Yeah, because this is the school of life.
I'm going to tell him you called him a hooky.
I might like that. So, Jory, welcome back.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're here.
Pleasure being here.
Yeah, I missed you, man.
I missed you too.
The entire time you were gone, man, I cried.
My left nipple feels a little left out.
I can tell. I can see just by how deformed it is.
That's just because I'm enlarged and in charge.
Oh,
yeah.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just only on the tits?
You'll find out later.
Oh. We are going to continue on the space.
Well, hold on. Before we get that going, let's tell them what we just had to deal with just 30 seconds or so.
What, 30 seconds?
Yeah, we just wasted 30 minutes.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so, I mean, as most everyone knows, this is obviously pre-recorded and edited before it's posted. And while we were recording, it decided to stop working in the middle of us talking.
Yeah, we didn't even realize it.
For like 30 fucking minutes and then looked over and realized I only recorded 4 of those fucking minutes. And so I'm not happy right now. So we got to start all over again.
Exactly.
I blame her since she's here. She's the only reason why I would do that.
Oh, always blame the white girl.
Exactly. With her pumpkin spice latte.
I was just thinking that.
You basic.
Hope I have boot.
Hope I have what? You say hope I have goop?
Hold the Ugg boot.
Oh, hold the Ugg boot. Oh, wow.
Ugg boot's a little too much for her.
Well, we did a thing where we asked for a Q&A, and we only got one, and it was on Instagram, so thank you for that.
Guess what? One's better than
none.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. I like your optimism. So the question is, can we as a people bring Pluto back to planetary status?
Basically, you call it a planet if you want to call it a planet. It's not ever going to be... I seriously don't think it's ever going to be considered a planet again. And it shouldn't have been considered a planet in the first place. For something to get to planetary status, full planetary status, it needs to meet certain criteria, which Pluto does not. To the best of my knowledge, the reason it was considered a planet for a short period of time, it's so far away we weren't able to view it and get a whole bunch of information off of it. So we just threw it out there as it was a planet, made 8 planets to 9. Well, as technology has progressed and advanced, and we've actually flown various different satellites with like the Voyagers and all them flew past Pluto, and we've got a few more that are going to get in the same area, if I'm not mistaken. We were able to realize it didn't meet those criteria, and that's when it was demoted thanks to Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Fucking Neil.
He gets so much hate about that.
I know. It's almost kind of like the whole Dinkelberg thing, you know?
Yep.
Anytime Neil does something, you know, he gets in trouble. Dinkelberg, you know? Neil.
But yeah, I don't think it'll ever get back to planetary status, no matter how much we as the people bitch and complain about it, just because it shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Now, do you think theoretically, since it's out there near the Kuiper Belt and shit, do you think that theoretically it could become a planet just with shit colliding into it?
No, it doesn't have. Without me knowing the criteria right off the bat, it's kind of hard for me to get into much detail on that.
Mass-wise,
no.
It would gain more mass if it got pounded. I mean, it would have to be on a scale that has never been seen.
You have to
before.
To fully understand what is out there, you have to actually think about it, not relativistically, but relative to everything else. So you have all the mass of the sun and all the planets and everything like that, right?
Mhm.
And then you think asteroid belt, and of course we've all seen those pictures of those big old asteroids and the ring around the sun. And
But they're actually not that close to each other.
if you take all the matter in the asteroid belt, same thing pretty much with the Kuiper belt, you're only going to get enough mass that is going to be about the size of our moon. If you're able to clump it all up, about the size of our moon in the whole size of the solar system. So it's not actually that much. It's not going to increase the mass of any celestial body out there by much.
I mean, it'd increase it by the size of the moon, though.
Yeah, pretty much.
And that's at least one more moon than size than it was.
But you also got to think what's it gonna cost. But no, it's got to have a multitude of criteria. One of which I think is like its orbit, and to move its orbit, it's gonna be
with that,
ridiculous.
what do you think about Planet X? Because there are multiple theories that there is Planet X out there. There's also people who say there isn't, or the data is not 100% concise that there definitely is or definitely isn't one. They just don't know yet. So what do you, and there's actually a telescope that's being built that will be open in 2021 that will allow them to see a little deeper into the Kuiper Belt. But what do you think about the planetary body? Do you think there is a Planet X out there in the Kuiper Belt or beyond? Or do you think there isn't one?
I'm not going to say we'll give it a definite whether I think there's one there or not, just because I'm not going to be one of those people that speculate. I try to stay away from speculation as much as possible. But what I can tell you is there is some evidence there. I just watched something about this a couple weeks ago. Don't remember exactly what they were talking about, but the evidence is there. The evidence is there to support the fact that there might be. And how we obtain that evidence is there's a certain process. I'm not sure what it is. There's a certain process that actually Uranus was found on. Yeah.
I like it.
I believe it was Uranus or Neptune. One of those.
Don't you mean Uranus?
Uranus. I'm Texan. I say Uranus. But there's this process they use to find Pluto and or Uranus. Uranus. I'm going to say Uranus. I think it's funny. Gives everybody a giggle, and that's what we all could use more of.
Just
in
like
this
pudding. See?
Pudding.
But anyway, but more on Uranus, please.
Yes.
Please expand and explore
And
more about Uranus.
Basically, what the process consists of is you can predict fairly accurately through mathematical models the orbit of various celestial objects like the sun. That's how they found exoplanets around other stars in our galaxy and a whole bunch of other stuff. You can predict where bodies are that you cannot physically see through its effects of another body. So they saw that the orbit of I think they found Neptune. It was the orbit of Neptune was a little off, and it suggested that there was a larger body a little bit further on, which if I'm not mistaken was Uranus. They used that same process and checked a whole bunch of stuff, and one of our planets further out there, I think Pluto included, is being affected like there is a different like there is another planet out there.
So that's what I've seen.
Yeah, there's been 2 or 3 different things that have gone on that have suggested that. So the consensus is it's possible. There's not enough evidence to confirm nor deny it, but it is possible, and the evidence is leading towards Planet X. Now, my question for you to think about is Planet X from our original disk of matter that created the solar system, or is it a stray planet that just happened to get caught in our sun's gravity and started orbiting it?
That's what I don't know yet. I mean, there's speculation that it does. That's what it was. And then there's speculation that it's a gas giant, so it formed in the outer gas ring. And then that's also what made the comets and shit, in the Kuiper Belt and shit. So there's that, but I don't know. I guess I'll have to just wait and see and find out if maybe one day there is. It's going to take forever to finally get something there. But from Planet X to SpaceX.
I like how you did that segue.
Thank you. I thought about it while you were talking about Planet X. I was like, Planet X to SpaceX. Oh, that's sexy. But from Planet X to SpaceX, please continue, Jory, and elaborate. Like you were talking about before when we found out that Pro Tools was like, we're not going to finish recording you, you plebs. Before that happened, you were telling us how Elon originally at one point had multiple failures, finally had a success, and then got a NASA contract.
Yes. And they ended up getting a NASA contract and immediately went from this little bitty one engine rocket that they'd only been able to successfully launch and get into orbit once to the full Falcon 9, which has 9 Merlin engines on it and is an orbital class reusable vehicle. Did not start off as reusable, but with the way technology has gone, with it being miniaturized, they've been able to put a lot more sensors and data detection devices in there. So they're able to see what's going on whenever it enters the atmosphere and see if it's plausible for that specific model of rocket to be reused, which had never been done before. And we discussed the difference between reusable and refurbishable last time.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be the first time a rocket's ever been reused. Well, they slowly started adding things, and that's where we get our blocks. You have block 1, various different changes inside block 1, 2, block 2, block 3, block 4, block 5. Right now we're in block 5, which is basically as reusable as it's going to get, as technologically advanced as it's going to get. They have to freeze the design of the engine or of the rocket. That way it could be certified for human use. There's a whole bunch of criteria that go into that. But one of those is freezing the model. This is all they also had planned. So they've been able to use the technology the past 15, 20 years that has come out to build on and create newer, better technology so that reusability and the price of rocket launches comes down.
Now, how is what is the success that happened not too long ago for that, which was what the big Falcon rocket, right? The BFR.
Yeah, it was the first prototype for the BFR.
Right. So with that success, what does that spell for the future in terms of just the way? Because like you were mentioning how the BFR could be a reliable on Earth travel.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you think this test shows what the future is going to be in terms of that type of travel? Do you think it's actually more feasible now? Do you think there's still a lot of kinks and bugs that need to be worked out with it? What do you personally see in that?
To think of kinks and bugs, yes, there's going to be a lot of kinks and bugs that need to work out. After that test flight that I had sent you, some various different YouTubers and people who like to sit here and analyze those videos a little bit further, such as Scott Manley and Everyday Astronaut,
right?
They started looking a little further and realized that the engine may not have performed nominally the best way it possibly could have. So there was a kink in that. There's also videos out there of after the Starhopper lands of a COPV, composite overwrapped pressure vessel going flying off like a little windmill, or it's Texas, so I'm going to call it a windmill off of the side of Starhopper. So yes, there's a lot of bugs that need to be worked out. The difference between other companies and SpaceX is they are open. So the complete development of this BFR is literally being built into built in the middle of a field down in Boca Chica, Texas, right at the southern tip of Texas. The Starhopper, there's 3 different vehicles we were talking about that you may hear me mention. We have Starhopper and we have Starship, which is almost complete. And there's actually 2 Starships. There's Starship MK1 down in Boca Chica, Texas, and there's a Starship MK2 down in Florida. MK1 is more open to the public. You can drive down Boca Chica Beach and take pictures of it. It's right by the Gulf, so you can get on a boat. Lab Padre's done all that. They've done aerial flyovers, drone footage, everything. In Cocoa, Florida, it's a little bit different. They're a little bit more closed, but those are two teams that are competing to build this actual orbital prototype, not just the hopper.
So, but that's still under SpaceX, though.
Yeah, all this is still under SpaceX.
Okay,
that's just to give you an idea of how the scale is sitting today. On the 26th, they're actually down in Boca Chica. They're actually going to be having a yearly get-together talking about the BFR. And by that time, they said that the BFR is going to be pretty much complete. Today, they started putting the landing legs on, which if you ever look at a picture, I have them all over my Facebook. You look at the pictures, they're getting the legs on. It's almost done. They're getting ready to start stacking stuff. They're building their launch sites, their flame trenches, everything. So that's where we're sitting today. The reason that's so important is because in the SpaceX lineup, they've had their Falcon 1, which is the one that they failed on the first 3 times. And on the 4th time, they were actually to become a success and get that contract from NASA.
Okay.
SpaceX would have failed if that would not have happened. And then you had the Falcon 9, which has been their main workhorse. After the Falcon 9, I want to say in 2017, 2018, maybe the very beginning of 2018, they had a Falcon Heavy launch, which is basically 3 Falcon 9s strapped together. It is the most powerful rocket in use today, and it is 98% reusable. The upper stage is still not reusable, but everything on the lower half of the rocket, which is the most expensive.
Isn't that the one that they did that successful test flight of where it landed back? That made like massive fucking news.
Yeah, it might have been. Because
I know like Smarter Every Day, Veritasium.
Yeah.
They were on YouTube were covering it, but I know it made actual news. Like,
well, see, the thing with the thing with
SpaceX successful with
they've had it as where Elon Musk sent his Tesla up into space as a weight simulator.
I think that was when it was. I'm not sure.
And see, the thing with a question like that is, I have a hard time answering those periodically because I'm in this world every single day. All of my free time is pretty much dedicated on being caught up minute by minute on what's going on. So something that I've been expecting for 6 months to a year, and I'm really excited happen, it may be absolutely nothing to the general person out there.
Right, yeah.
So, yes, the Falcon Heavy first launched with a Tesla on top. And it's launched, I want to say 2 more times after that. They've had 3 Falcon Heavy launches, and they should have another one either by the end of the year or the beginning of next year. That's all in their Falcon series of rockets. All the Falcons have ran off of the same engines. It's just been various different, like the first one was Falcon 1 to the Falcon 9. They were going to have a Falcon 5, but they decided to just go straight for the Falcon 9. And from the Falcon 9 to the Falcon Heavy, which has 27 Merlin engines, if I'm not mistaken, which technology is allowed to happen when it comes to the sensors of monitoring all those independently with artificial intelligence to make sure all that stuff can run right. Because in the Apollo era, Russia had the N-1 rocket, and it had 32 engines, 33 engines, something like that. But the reason it launched 4 or 5 times and failed every single time, blew up. Reason was because they were trying to run that many engines. When you add that number of engines, there adds a whole nother level of complexity, which technology did not allow them to handle back then in that day and age. Nowadays, that is the case, which means you can build smaller, cheaper, more mass-produced rocket engines. Okay. Which has been the Merlin. The Merlin is the per ratio of size to power is the most powerful ratioed rocket engine to date.
So it's not only is it the most efficient, but it's the most powerful.
No,
for given its size.
For given its size, yes, because there are engines out there that are massively more efficient, and there's also engines out there that are massively more powerful. For its size, it is the most powerful, which means they can fit more into the same amount of area.
They can get more bang for their buck that way.
And exactly, and it also
so basically they did. Let's say, for example, this one rocket, they could fit like 5 of them, but they could fit 10 of the Merlins. And like those 5 of those other ones, yeah, that's pretty fucking powerful. But these 10 edges that out anyway.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that would make sense why they would go for that one.
And there are also another perk of having more engines is redundancy. SpaceX is trying to change the game in multiple areas, and redundancy is one of the biggest areas. We talked a little bit last time about the computers on the Apollo missions. Well, one of the biggest things you have to have, as just a little refresh, is you have to have shielded processors and various other things, shielded electronics. That way the radiation in space doesn't come through and mess with that. Well, the shielding is incredibly expensive and incredibly heavy. So SpaceX has found a way around that with many, many, many things. And that is redundancy. Not just having one computer, but having 3 or 4 of them. So if one of them has that mess up, the other ones are going to catch it because it's not going to have the same mess up.
Basically just following Murphy's Law to a T.
Same thing with the engines. If you have one engine go out on a rocket that has 5, you're down to 80% thrust. And then it also makes it harder because depending on where on the bottom that engine goes out, will cause the thrust to be different than if it was working properly, which means the other engine have to gimbal if they do gimbal to allow for that. And just
or even for that, I could see it where it's like they could do even thrust to do, the arch to get out.
Yes.
But if one fails, then another one's going to have to thrust even more, which then makes its reliability
Yes.
dwindle faster, and its ability to be reused again, if at all, go down, just because of the fact it's having more wear and tear on it because one goes out.
Yes, and another big problem that older engines used to have was if something went wrong, they usually exploded.
Right.
And when you have 30 engines on the bottom of a vehicle, if you have an engine rapidly disassemble, it's going to rapidly disassemble every other engine on that rocket. New rockets, when they mess up, most of the time, 99% of the time, they do not explode anymore. They just completely shut down. And there might be a small little fire or something, but it's not an explosion. Now it basically became a redundancy issue. It's better now, since we have the capability through computers and technology to monitor 27, 30 different engines.
Right.
Now that becomes, instead of hindering us, it comes to help us, because 60 or 70, 80% thrust when one engine goes out versus one engine going out on a vehicle that has 27 or 30, you're not going to feel the effects quite as much. And it's going to be easier to compensate for it. So then now they're basically stepping into their second stage of their massive plan that they got. Their whole plan is to send us to Mars, to have us
colonize and shit like that.
Colonize Mars and all that other stuff. So their next stage is going to be the BFR, which is completely separate than the Falcon family of rockets. It's got a new rocket engine, the Raptor engine, which I have the F1 engine shirt on from Everyday Astronaut now. I also have the his other shirt, the Raptor schematics that just came out. But this rocket engine is the most technologically advanced rocket engine to date. It's got the highest chamber pressure, which more chamber pressure means more efficiency, and efficiency is magnificent when we're talking about heading millions of miles to Mars.
Yeah.
And so they just had their first hop with the Starhopper, aka Hoppy, and then in the process of testing that one, they've got 2 BFRs being built. And BFR is basically, it's not the technical name for it. It's turned into, you're going to have your Starship up top, which is the spaceship, and you're going to have your super heavy booster underneath. So it's Starship Super Heavy, but a lot of us still call it the BFR because that's what the whole thing, when that last time they named the whole thing, those 2 pieces included, it was the BFR. Then they split it into 2. But the BFR, like I said, there's 2 being built, one in Cocoa, Florida, one in Boca Chica, Texas, and they should be complete by the 26th or damn near. And by the end of next month or the beginning of the month after that, they should be doing their first test flights. They've already, they're already within talks of the FAA, various other different environmental agencies they're going through, they're talking to. A few days ago, they dropped flyers and legal documents off to the inhabitants of Boca Chica, which is right smack dab in the middle of their test facility, to buy their houses out at 3 times the value of the average house in that specific town. And things are kicking up. They're in the process of building their 11th or 12th Raptor engine, if I'm not mistaken. And they're working on getting it down so fast to where they're able to pump out 1 Raptor engine per every 12 hours, which means they'll come out with over 400 Raptor engines a year, which there's going to be 6 on Starship, 6 Raptor engines on Starship, and 28 or 30 on Super Heavy. Maybe more, maybe 36 now. It's constantly changing, but we'll get a better idea of what it's going to be on the 26th. But those are almost complete. And a year ago, both of these places, very few people knew existed. Like the Starhopper had just been built, or not even been built yet. It was just a glimmer in Elon Musk's eye. It's already flown, it's already retired, and they're already building orbital versions. That's another cool thing about them, about NASA transferring everything over to private industry, is NASA ran everything like a bureaucracy, which for an entity like the government is perfectly fine. It's what's needed.
Because I know we kind of talked about that too, with NASA being a bureaucracy last time as well.
And bureaucracy is always talked down upon, or bureaucratic systems are always talked down upon. I don't always think it's a bad thing, because
well, I mean, now do you think that it could be a hindrance though in some degrees?
I think after
like what you had mentioned last time with the reason NASA's so slow, which you're like, okay, it's because a new president, new idea, some things that were going great just got grind to a halt, or they're still being worked on, but not having all the funding flowing to it anymore.
We'll see a bureaucratic system, depending on the situation, works up to a point. With NASA, it worked amazingly up to a point. The bureaucratic system was what founded NASA. A bureaucratic system is what allowed us to go to the moon and start off the space shuttle and space station and all that other stuff. But after a certain time, a bureaucratic system is good at getting things started, but then when it comes to progressing and perpetuating whatever it is they're doing, a bureaucratic system starts to hinder it at the same time. So we're seeing that with NASA, SpaceX, Blue Origin, all those private companies coming in and doing that.
Like I asked you last time, so you think those private companies, especially seeing what SpaceX is doing, as you were just mentioning, about the Falcon rockets and stuff like that. So do you think because they're no longer bureaucratic, they're privately funded, privately researched, it's not a government entity having to make sure that it works. Because of that, do you think that's why we're having more extreme advances, like faster in that regard?
Oh, yes. Yes, definitely.
Now, knowing that those companies are competing against each other, though, do you think that they help each other, though, at the same time? So, like, SpaceX just figured out why this shit now can work. Let's also use it. Or do you think that competition is there to the point where it's like, I'm not going to use SpaceX shit, I'm not going to use Horizon shit or anything like that?
To a point. That gets a little weird and iffy in the rocket industry because SpaceX is having a competition with themselves. And this early on in the game, you can classify certain entities as competition. I personally wouldn't. A lot of people in this community don't. Like Blue Origin. Blue Origin is the closest company to be considered a competition. Compared to what SpaceX is doing right now, and Blue Origin, yes, Blue Origin, who Jeff Bezos, the owner of Amazon, CEO of Amazon, the owner of Blue Origin, they are sitting in two completely different areas. SpaceX has been going to space and has had so many different NASA contracts and won so many different competitions that they are already in the field and moving forward. Blue Origin hasn't even gotten to orbit yet. They've just barely reached space. Now, speaking relatively, what they are doing is what Blue Origin is doing is absolutely amazing. And they are achieving their own goals. But their goals are completely different than SpaceX, and they're taking two completely different roads. SpaceX can't even be compared to Blue Origin. They're doing two completely different things.
Okay.
The only people that are really trying to compete directly with SpaceX right at this moment is other countries, full countries, and the full power of that government behind those countries getting to that point. But there's so many different variables, you could not even consider them a competition. So talking competitions gets really weird and really complex as we sit right now. Now, in the next couple of years, that might change because there have been announced a multitude of different rockets from different companies that are said to compete with SpaceX and get in that same market. But right now, there is no competition. The president of the ESA, I believe, the ESA, European Space Agency, has already said that, no, there is no competition. Right now, SpaceX is demolishing anybody in that field. So right now, there's not enough competition to say. In the future, I don't know exactly how it'll go. Because right now, what SpaceX does is they only patent anything that is on the inside that will not be seen by any type of media, camera, video, anything. They're
very privatized.
They're only patent what's on the inside. They don't see any use to patent anything on the outside, though. So anything that you see, you can build yourself and sell it, and it will not be patented.
So why did they adopt that philosophy rather than, a thing of like internal and external patents?
Necessity. There's no point in patenting things on the outside that you can see, because a patent is a area-wide type thing. Like if you have a patent for something here in the United States, somebody from China can see that, copy it, and sell it and import it into the United States. And no charges will be filed because it is created, built, and technically sold in China. So what's the point in trying to fight a battle you're going to lose when your biggest competitions are going to be other governments and whatever patents you put on it hold no ground? Does that make sense?
Okay. I got you.
The reason SpaceX is so open is because they're trying to revamp the space race to get more funding for us to become a human or a multi-planetary species. So that's the reason they're so open. And it's just part of how Elon Musk runs a business. He's that way with a lot of his businesses. Tesla, the Boring Company, all of his pet projects. He's more open than what you would actually think he would be, because that's just his philosophy. That's just what he does. And it gets people hyped. It creates a following. It creates enthusiasm for whatever it is he's doing. And it works. So that's what he's doing with SpaceX as well. And evidently it's working.
Right. Well, I know this episode is just a little bit shorter than we normally do, but we're definitely going to have you back again.
Exactly.
So if anyone wants to ask Jory here some questions about SpaceX, space, Uranus, however you want, whatever you want to do, just make it safe for work or not safe for work. Don't really care. You can just hit us up on our Twitter and our Instagram. Yeah, also email us at flatlandthepodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on YouTube. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. And thank you, everyone, for listening to Flatlands the Podcast. I'm Jonathan.
Thank you. It's Jory. Y'all take it easy.
See you next time.
Bye.